Hey friends, it's Miss Cash and happy Friday. It's almost the weekend. It's our last Friday of the entire school year, which is so exciting. And I'm excited to talk with you today about another style of protesting, in particular, how it was used in the civil rights movement today. It's called a sit-in. I want you to take a look at the picture right here, where you see these three men sitting at a counter. And notice what seems to be going on here. Are they doing anything in particular? Nope, they're just sitting there peacefully. They were part of a sit in, and we're going to find out what that is today. So let's jump in. This does make me a little hungry because it says that there's layer cake and apple pie for 15 cents. And if you know me, you know I have a huge sweet tooth. 15 cents, pretty cheap for that delicious snack. All right, make sure you have a pencil and paper. Like we've done before, we're going to go through every section and then summarize the most important parts. And then we will review them all together and figure out the author's point of view. Civil rights sit ins. What is a sit in? Sit ins are a type of protest. Protesters sit or stand while peacefully occupying a space. The goal is to disrupt the activities that normally take place there. Protesters usually stay in the area until their demands are met or until they're arrested or removed. Sit-ins are a strong way to create social change without using violence. This type of protest was used during the United States civil rights movement. People staged sit-ins so that Black and white Americans could be treated equally. They spoke out against segregated spaces or spaces separated by race. Now, this goes back to a lot of the stuff you've probably learned about before, where there was a white water fountain and a colored water fountain. And if you were Black, you had to drink from the colored one, or if there's a door for white people and a door for Black people. This is the same thing. There were a bunch of spaces, especially restaurants and things that everyone in the public used, that were segregated by race. And you can see right here another lunch counter sit in. All of these ladies are sitting here peacefully, just taking up space in the chairs. Pause the video and make sure that you have written down the main idea of this uh, paragraph. Go ahead. Okay, so my note is that sit-ins are a type of protest where people peacefully disrupt a space, and people use sit-ins to speak out against segregated spaces. All right, let's keep going. History of sit-ins. The history of sit-ins by civil rights activists back dates back as far as 1939. For example, Samuel Wilbert Tucker led a sit-in in the segregated Alexandria, Virginia Public Library. In 1950, the Supreme Court ruled in Sweat versus Painter that white and Black Americans could not be treated as separate but equal. After the secession, more people staged sit-ins to protest against places that were segregated. Students staged a sit-in at the Harrison County Courthouse in Marshall, Texas. This caused Texas to make new laws. There were many effective sit-ins in the 1950s. They took place in Baltimore, Wichita, Durham, and Oklahoma City. Still, most sit-ins were isolated incidents. The Greensboro, North Carolina sit-in of 1960 was different. It started a national movement. Pause here and write down what you think the main idea is of this passage or of this section. All right. My summary here is that sit-ins were used to fight against segregated spaces. We learned about a bunch of specific ones here, but the most important thing is that people were using them to protest segregated spaces after it was ruled that it was illegal to treat people as separate but equal, which is a scary thing to think about, how that was once appropriate and considered appropriate in the United States. This is a Greensboro 4 statue located in Greensboro, North Carolina. Let's find out who these people were. The first sit in. On February 1st, 1960, four African American teenagers went to Woolworth's lunch counter, that's like a big department store, kind of like Macy's, in Greensboro, North Carolina. The people who worked there would not serve them because of their race, but the four sat quietly until closing time. News of the protest spread. By the end of the week, over 1,000 supporters had joined the cause. The protesters, both Black and white, braved taunts, threats, and violence. They never used violence. This was important in gaining support from the public. The media also paid attention to their actions. For the first time, the Greensboro sit-in became national news. Pause the video and write your caption. Okay, I wrote from my summary that the Greensboro sit-in was peaceful and got a lot of fame and attention. It was really successful because a lot of people across the country heard about it and then were supportive of the people that were protesting by doing a sit-in at a department store. All right, let's move on to the final paragraph. Effects of sit-ins. Sit-ins spread through the country, largely in the South. This continued until the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This law stopped discrimination based on race and color. And this is the president signing the Civil Rights Act, while Martin Luther King Jr. right there looks on. Sit-ins changed the fight for equal rights. They gained attention and support for the cause. Without this public support, the Civil Rights Act would not have passed as soon as it was. This is a 2009 sit in Italy, so just a few years ago, for gay rights. The civil rights sit ins became a model for other causes in later decades. The feminist movement, disability rights movement, transgender rights movement, and various others have used sit ins to create positive change. Now, before we summarize this last paragraph, I want to talk a little bit about this section. It says that this law stopped discrimination based on race and color. Now, even though this law, the Civil Rights Act, said that everyone should be treated equally, are people treated equally right now in the United States? Absolutely not. So, even though the law says that one thing is happening, there's a lot of other things that are still not equal and still not right for people who are not white. So, it's important to remember that even though the Civil Rights Act made it so technically everyone has the same rights, the way that that works right now is not the case. Okay, let's pause and summarize the effects of sit-ins passage. Okay. I wrote that sit-ins were used successfully in the South until the Civil Rights Act was passed, and that lots of protests use sit-ins as a good strategy. Because I know, thanks to this passage, that it wasn't just the civil rights movement that used it, but a bunch of different people who had less rights and had to fight for more used sit-ins. Okay, let's go over all of our summaries for our different paragraphs and see if we can come up with the author's point of view. Remember, that's what the author thinks or feels about the topic. All right, in the beginning, we learned that a sit-in is a peaceful protest, and they use them to speak out against segregated spaces. That's what we learned in the second paragraph too. The Greensboro sit-in was peaceful and got a lot of fame and attention, so it was very successful. And that sit-ins were used successfully in the South until the Civil Rights Act was passed. Lots of protests used sit-ins as a good strategy. Pause the video and think, what is the author's point of view based on what we just read and the way the author wrote about it? I wrote that sit-ins were an effective protest strategy, and I know that because it shows that many examples of sit-ins working, as people fought for equal rights and treatment throughout history. All right, team, have an awesome weekend. I'll see you Monday.